Okay, this is it.
All right.
Go live. It says I'll be better off if I add a title, but I'm not going to add a title. I'm just going to title it Hello. Hello, everybody. Here we are. We are a couple of doctors on a Monday night reaching you live here on Facebook. I'm Lucy McBride, and joining me tonight is once again my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Clay Ackerly. Clay it's been a long Monday. It's been a long day.
It's been a long day.
Is it only Monday? So Clay Ackerly is one of my medical partners. I've also known him since he was a wee child. And we work together in the same practice, both practice internal medicine. And tonight we're going to answer a number of your questions that you were kind enough to write in. And we're also happy to field questions that you write in live as we're talking. Okay, so I was just going to start, Clay, you and I were talking before the show about what the vibe is in our practices. And I would say this: today is day one of phase 2 of reopening in Washington, D.C. A lot of neighboring areas are open as well and have been, and a lot of states are reopening. So on the one hand, it's exciting, and people are thinking, wow, now I can go get that tattoo I've been wondering about, and I can go get that, tanning bed, and I can sit inside in a restaurant, and I can go to the gym, and I can sit. There are a number of things that are now available to us, but the complicating thing is that coronavirus has not changed in character. It has not changed in its ability to infect us without us even knowing it. And while the case rates in DC are looking better, we still have to practice what Scott Gottlieb called flexible vigilance. So I'm having a lot of conversations with patients just today and last week about decision making. Should I go to the gym? Should I get on a plane? Should I go see my mother I haven't seen in 3 months? And so tonight we're going to hopefully answer some of those burning questions. What's the vibe over at your end of the practice?
Yeah, I have to admit I've not gotten any questions about tattoo parlors. So I think
Really?
the official response from this neck of the woods is, if you're looking to do a tattoo, now is a great time to continue to think through your designs. You'll have plenty of time when the pandemic is over to pursue that passion. I would say,
I hope my teenagers are listening to that.
I think you put it well in terms of the new sets of anxiety. And really, there is the split sort of personality of seeing in Washington our local hospitals with plenty of capacity, seeing fewer and fewer cases locally, yet still a lot of concern nationally about some of the rises in cases. So I do, and I've really been encouraging my patients to catch up on important things, right? Preventive medical visits, dental appointments when appropriate, if you've got dental needs. And really, as you said, go and see that family member. If that matters, if that promotes resilience, I am concerned about what the fall and winter may bring. And there is no better time to get caught up on the things that truly matter.
You know what, Clay?
However,
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I'm not sure we're live.
I see we're recording.
You know what? We're not live yet.
Okay.
Hold on. Are we live?
Is there someone watching you can tell us?
Let me ask my husband if we're live. Can you? Yeah, I'm wondering if someone can tell us. I don't think we are.
Okay.
Not to interrupt your great soliloquy there.
No.
But I think we're not live. Stop live stream. Hold on a second.
Technical difficulties.
Okay, let's start over. I don't know if we were live. I just don't. I think because I couldn't see it. Thad is supposed to tell me. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Hey, Thad. Oh, were we live? Okay. Can you tell us when I am live? We were just talking. Oh shoot. Okay, so we weren't live. How stupid is it? We were not live.
Okay.
Okay, that was kind of a good little intro.
Well, depending on how you edit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was on YouTube.
Let's see. That was a good little preview. All right, go live. Preview. Go live. Go live anyway.
There we go.
There we go. All right. That was just a dry run. Okay, so that was just kind of warming up. All right, everybody. Sorry Sorry, we are a few minutes late. We had some behind the scenes technical difficulties, but here we are. Okay. Hello,
Okay.
everybody. Now we're streaming. Woohoo! Okay, so good evening. It's 8 o'clock. It's June 22nd, 2020, and I'm Lucy McBride. Thank you so much for joining us. We're a couple minutes late because we were fussing around with some technical issues, but here we are, a couple of doctors on a Monday night chatting about COVID and what's new in the news, what is the vibe on the street, what are we hearing from our patients, and we're going to just banter about and answer some of the questions that you've kindly written into us. We have a number of questions we're going to hit. First, I want to give you a little bit of a landscape of what we're seeing. So Clay, Dr. Ackerly here is joining me. Clay Ackerly is, what?
Good to be back.
I'm so glad you're back. Clay Ackerly is my medical partner, a very good friend, and someone I've known for a long, long time, and is going to join me tonight as we answer these questions and tackle decision-making in phase 2. So right now in Washington, D.C., we're entering phase 2 as of today, which is exciting in many ways. It means we can go to the tanning salon, we can get a tattoo that we've been pondering for a couple of years, we can sit in indoor restaurants, but it doesn't mean that we should do those things. I don't know if it's ever okay to go to a tanning bed anyway, or get a tattoo. I mean, I'm not morally opposed to them, but you know, I hope my kids are listening. Let's just not run to the tattoo parlor. But
Post-pandemic tattoos, I think, will be okay.
Yeah, I think Dr. Ackerly was saying this is a good time to ponder your design, to kind of flesh it out, kind of get the good shading before you actually take the plunge. But what the problem with phase 2 is that we are open, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. It doesn't mean that you should engage in these activities that you're now legally allowed to do. So we're going to talk about the decisions that people are making, the pros and the cons. Should I go to the gym? Should I get on an airplane to see my mother I haven't seen in 3 months? Should I get on the road, take a vacation? Should I share a beach house with somebody? Should I join pods with my neighbor and have our kids play together? These are the conundrums that people are dealing with. And I was telling my patients today that it's almost like it's a phase 2 of reopening and a phase 2 of anxiety, where we have decisions to make. When we were in lockdown, there was no decision. It was just lockdown. So Dr. Ackerly, please let me stop talking and let me have you take the platform and tell me what the vibe is on your side of the practice.
No, I think the sort of phase 2 of anxiety is well said. The fact that there is a bit of a split personality or set of conflicting messages that we're hearing in terms of fewer cases in Washington, the hospitals have plenty of capacity, and yet we hear on the news nightly now about increased cases across the country and the world, and COVID-19 remains a serious threat. However, now is a really important opportunity to take advantage smartly and intelligently of the fact that there is less virus in the community, and we are unfortunately in for a really long ride, and that I continue to worry, especially about what's going to happen even in Washington in the fall and winter. And so now is the opportunity, and you really need to take advantage of that to get caught up on preventive maintenance items, including psychological preventive maintenance, seeing family and friends safely, doing it well, but not taking frivolous risks, waiting to get that tattoo until after the pandemic.
Or never in the case of my kids. Yep. Anyway, just saying.
I don't want to limit the artistic creativity of those out there who find that
they can do, you know, they can do what they want. They're, you know, one of them's 18, but I think you're right, Clay, or Dr. Ackerly. Scott Gottlieb coined this, or maybe he didn't coin the term, but someone coined the term flexible vigilance, which is an appropriate term to be using now. Vigilance is essential. Vigilance with wearing masks, with social distancing, with being outdoors over indoors whenever you can, and practicing good hygiene. But flexibility is also important because we do have this window right now, which, you know, it's not magic. It's not like the coronavirus is gone. In fact, it's very much here, but we have a window where it would be a good idea to get the mammogram, get your dental cleaning, you know, get your checkup with your doctor, and take calculated small risks. As you said, for psychological reasons, it's important we connect with people, you know, at a distance, at a backyard barbecue, separated by 6 feet, ideally. and also important that we practice taking little risks, because as you said, we're going to be living with this virus for a long, long time. It doesn't mean we've thrown in the towel and we're saying, oh, the hell with it, and let's just live our lives and let's get infected and, you know, just see how things play out. I mean, there's a large gray area between letting go of our precautions like they did in Sweden and being in total lockdown, right? And so the gray area, I think, is where people have the hardest time. The anxiety, the flavor of anxiety in the beginning of this whole pandemic was like that heart racing, palm sweating, you know, sort of adrenaline jag, like when you've walked, you know, off a curb and the bus is about to hit you. Now I'm seeing people have this sort of different type of anxiety where they have choices and they have options, and there's should I or shouldn't I? So we're going to hit some of those questions that you guys have written in. And Clay, do you want to start with some of those, or what do you want to do next?
Sure. I think, you know, in terms of flexible vigilance, I think I want to comment quickly on what's happening here. I think you can see this is now the third time that we're doing this. And I'm trying to be flexible and learn about what does it mean to actually speak into a camera. And
you mean the third time we're doing this live thing? Yeah,
this
is it the
live
third
thing
time?
together, right? And so you see
Yeah.
me now in a white coat, which I haven't worn since residency, but I'm wearing it now because I think it can help with good hygiene practices in my very brief encounters with my patients. So I have, you know, been flexible, and there is a real need to see patients face to face for the physical exam, and we are incorporating that into what we're doing now. So, you know, I think that is important.
I want to talk a little bit about what a virtual physical looks like. I'm telling
Sure.
my patients about that. What does it look like?
So I think a lot of different doctors are going to tackle this in different ways. I think you and I have similar thoughts on this, but it's really split into several sections. There's the face-to-face section where you come into my office for my patients, and there's a very brief encounter. I hear from you very quickly what the major problems are, so I can really dive in on the physical exam to those areas that are quite pertinent. Then we get you to the lab, get the appropriate lab tests done, and then get you home. After that, once we get the results back, we do a Zoom call together, and that does allow, and despite the sort of challenged and very rapid in-person section, does allow for a decent amount of time to really dive into the results, talk about what's on your mind, without the fear that the face-to-face time, we're really diving into those topics, could potentially put you at risk. So as complicated as it's been, I think it has certainly tried to take advantage of what we really need to accomplish face-to-face, and then take advantage of technology to supplement that. So
I'm finding it hard not to chit-chat or I mean, in a medically appropriate way, but also just catch up with my patients when we're doing
Right.
that quick physical exam part. When we know a day or two later we're going to do the whole Zoom conversation, it's hard because I've missed my patients. It's hard
Totally.
not to just engage with them, and it's hard to be completely clinical and okay, you know, listen to your heart, lungs, belly, abdomen, spine, skeletal
Bye.
diagram. See you later. It's just
Yeah, it's like I've
really
talked to you on the
natural.
phone a lot in the last 3 months, and I missed you.
I know.
Okay, now it's hi, bye, goodbye. Yeah.
Not to mention that everyone has a pandemic story that's still being written, right? We all have had our experiences that are relevant to our health, right? Whether you've been, you know, drinking more alcohol or eating more sugar or, you know, exercising more, you want to tell your doctor, you want to talk about it. And so I'm trying to truncate those visits so that we can then expand on them in virtual modes. But that's what a virtual physical looks like.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about, can we talk about this question of I'm just going to jump in
Yeah, please.
to some of the questions.
We got some questions here we got to get to. So
Yes, we got some questions we
why
got to
not
get to. Okay, so can we talk about eating in restaurants? So people are asking, you know, is it safe to sit inside a restaurant? And what are you telling them?
I do think it matters on your risk level. And I've seen some tools out there that try to look at the various activities, what's your risk, low, medium, and high. And I think that's oversimplifying the risk. But I'm generally discouraging eating inside a restaurant. When you look at the respiratory or the dynamics of how the virus spreads, mostly it's droplet, maybe aerosol. Contact is less of a concern. But if you're in an enclosed space, the risk of catching a decent amount of virus is much higher, particularly if you're taking off your mask to eat food inside a restaurant, even if it's at 50% capacity. It's 50% of what? Do you really know
Right.
what the ventilation system is like?
Right.
So I think that's where you need to use common sense, right? If it's technically inside a restaurant that you know that it's completely empty, but like the main windows are wide open, you're effectively outside. Do you take advantage of the flexibility in the phase 2 rules to have a quick meal? Sure, but I think you need to trust your gut on that. But generally speaking, sort of inside restaurants are something that I would discourage for almost anybody.
I think
particularly from a
I think it's a great point, and you described it well. And it does come down also to, as I've talked about with my patients, what are the things that you care most about? If you're dying to get inside the luxurious, McDonald's on your corner, not to make fun of McDonald's. McDonald's is a wonderful institution in many, many ways. But you may just consider whether that's worth it. I mean, I would pick something else above eating inside a restaurant if I was going to take that kind of a risk.
Yeah.
Like people are asking about getting their hair cut, going to the salon, getting manicures, pedicures. And again, if you're in an enclosed space, that's so much more risky than if you're outdoors. I mean, Lena Wen was on the news this weekend saying it's, being outdoors decreases your risk by 18-fold. I don't know where she's getting that data, but let's just say this. And I mean, she's a public health expert, so I'm hoping she's getting the data from somewhere. But the point is that outdoors provides natural ventilation. If you're indoors in a hair salon, a manicure place, or a restaurant, and people are taking masks off and you're not distanced, it's much riskier. So think about the things that you really want to do and then make calculated decisions.
Absolutely. And I think there's been a similar debate going on around travel, right? Do you drive or do you fly? And part of my advice around that is around how much can you control your environment?
Yeah.
On a flight, I believe that the air handling is great, but going through the airport, there are a lot of things that you may not be able to control, including someone walking down the aisle and coughing right in your face.
Right.
Chances of that happening, probably pretty low, but if you're driving a car, if you can drive a car, that's not going to happen. Yes, there are issues of rest stops and how many bathroom breaks can you do, and walking in and out of the bathroom, could someone cough in your face too? Sure. But I feel like things where you can really control your environment, where the limits that you've set for yourself based on your risk and your understanding of the virus, makes for, I think, an easier process and decision.
Right. And unlike when you walk into a crowded, say, CVS to pick up a prescription, you can turn around and go outside. When you're on an airplane, 10,000 feet, there's no going back. So I'm really discouraging my patients from flying unless it's essential. And essential can mean different things for different people. Seeing a loved one across the country is essential for some people. And I think if you fly, what I'm telling people is to try to check as much as they can, to not have personal items on them on the flight, to carry hand sanitizer with them everywhere, which is now allowed to go through security. To bring wipes with them to wipe down the hard surfaces like the tray tables and the armrests, and to wear a mask and have it firmly snug around your nose and your chin, and just as much as you're able to, stay at least 6 feet apart from the other passengers. I don't know how that's going on most airlines. I'm hearing from some patients that they're packing people in.
I think it depends on the flight. I've heard it both ways. Now, I'm going to add one thing to your advice there, with a little bit of show and tell.
Oh, please. This was what I was looking forward to.
Think, so the AARP has a good article on this. There's a JAMA editorial by two experts that talk about the benefit of face shields. It's not just for medical providers. They don't look all that cool, although there are ways to make them look cooler.
I mean, that looks really, really cool.
I don't know if you can hear me at all.
It's cool.
Right? So they do muffle your voice a little bit, but they do allow you to be seen if you don't have a mask on. This by itself can be effective in a barbecue situation. I also have purchased a slightly more heavy-duty version.
Wow.
These are purchased on Amazon. And this is something that's easily wiped down. So if you're worried about being green and whatnot, or losing or you don't worry about losing, because the other one is nice and they're probably $3 or $4 a piece. This is about $30.
Oh, wow, that's legit. I mean, that is like really very cool. You can, it looks like a motorcycle helmet. Like you could just zoom off.
You can absolutely. I mean, I've seen people walk around in the full face mask, like scuba. They have the full face mask scuba gear, or I think it's the snorkel gear. There's also, bicycle helmet, motorcycle helmet, ski helmet with a shield on it.
But let's just say the mask is still the standard of care.
It is, and I think this is additive, right? Particularly if someone is above you, sort of coughing down on you. So I've definitely encouraged my patients who need to fly for essential purposes to invest in a face shield as an additive measure. And then in areas where it's sort of a medium risk interaction, it can substitute for a mask.
Yep. So someone's asking here on live Facebook, getting fast food from a drive-through window. I think that's okay. I mean, look, nothing's okay, right? But it's okay-ish if you take the fast food. There's no evidence of any transmission of virus through food, as far as I know.
Not that I've seen. I think they're, like anything, use common sense.
Yeah.
If you're seeing the person behind the window not wearing a mask, not wearing gloves, and then your drink happens to be handled by them, right? You may want to wipe that down before you put your mouth on it. But everything has some level of risk, as you say. But I think a drive-through does minimize your exposure, and if that is what it's going to take for you to be fed for the moment, and you're just really hangry, and you're passing by your fast food, place of choice, I think it's worth the risk. As long as you have that Purell, and you can sort of wipe down the areas that could have been exposed. So
I do think it's better than being inside the establishment. That better to be in your own car. But again, but there's not data that I've seen that is transmitted through food, or like vegetables at a farmer's market, or so I think we're okay. People are still asking me, speaking of which, do they still need to wipe down groceries, wipe down packages? And I'm saying this, it's so low yield and it's going to drive you crazy. I don't think it's necessary. What is necessary is very careful hand washing after you unpack your groceries and just not touching your face, because God forbid the packages had some virus on it. You're going to wash your hands and then it's going to be gone.
I think you're right. It highlights some of the challenges that we're dealing with, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Marjorie Waxman was just asking me about washing vegetables and fruit. I don't think you need to do it in any special way, because it's not. You should be
washing your fruit already. Maybe if it's an apple, you don't want whatever pesticides are on it.
Right. But there's no special COVID way.
No. Yeah.
So outdoor dining at a restaurant, I think, is okay, as long as you're distanced and you're wearing masks. When you're eating, obviously you have to bring it down. I mean, I've seen pictures on the news of people outdoor dining, which of course is safer than indoor dining, who are packed together and people are not wearing masks because they're obviously eating. And that's a lot less safe than if people are masked, distanced, and outside.
But again, I think it goes back to the issue that we started with, which is that truly important to you?
Right.
The virus is out there. There could be a server who really needs that job, who happens to have it, didn't tell their employer that they have it, and they cough right on you and you're there, right? You don't have control over that environment. Is it a reasonably safe environment? Yes. If going to a restaurant outside is really important, I think probably that first restaurant experience is going to mean a lot to a lot of people. The second, third, fourth, fifth may not mean as much, and then you have that additive risk. So I think it's common sense at this point.
And let's talk about another question I'm getting asked a lot about today, particularly when gyms are now reopening in DC. Is it okay to go to the gym? And it goes to the same point. So exercise is, to me, an essential part of people's mental and physical health. There's nothing that exercise isn't good for. Unless you're like an over-exerciser, exerciser addict, then I tell people to back off. But that's like a very small minority of people. But exercise is good for everything from dementia to diabetes. It's good for our mental health, our physical health. There are still many, many ways to exercise outside. Walking is in. I've met more and more of my neighbors from a distance in the last 3 months than I ever have before. It's been wonderful. So people are out walking, and that's still a great, sustainable, heart-healthy way and joint-healthy way to get exercise. But if you find that you can't, deal with the humidity and the heat, it's very hot here in DC, and you want to go to the gym, I think it's okay, again, if that's your priority, as long as you are careful. I would avoid the restroom. I would avoid the changing room. I would avoid touching, shared equipment. Of course, if you're going for the equipment, you have to use it, and I would just wipe it down. I would wipe it down before, I'd wipe it down after, wash your hands. I might bring my own hand sanitizer. Just go in and out, in, exercise, and out. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, and I think in my experience with my patients, I think there's a rare instance when I would ever recommend going to a gym. I apologize to the gym owners out there.
Oh, you're gonna not recommend gyms?
I'm not.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not because it's particularly because I think it's high risk or that we've seen super spreader events there. It just seems like a bad idea. And yes, in letters to my patients, I've emphasized that there's probably not a single thing that you can do that is more important to your health, particularly in this pandemic, than exercise.
Yep, agree.
Even with the importance of it, there are great workouts you can do if you just Google like hotel room workouts, or you need a little bit of cardio, a little bit of resistance training, a little bit of stretching and core support. But you can do that without that much room. And I do worry about August in DC, July in DC, how hot and humid it's going to be, that all of the wonderful walks that we've been getting are going to go poof.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a good debate, Clay, and I'm glad we don't like 100% align on it, because that makes it more fun. The thing about it is that like a number of my patients just aren't going to exercise if they don't have the gym. Do you know what I mean? Like, are they it takes a lot. It's sort of this external motivator to have a place to go. Yep. Right? Particularly if you're paying for a gym, you're more likely to go. I mean, that's the psychology of gyms and why they make money off the people who never go. But the people who do go because they're paying monthly. And so, if that's the thing that motivates you to get exercise, and otherwise you really can't find a way to get exercise on your own, on YouTube or walking, and you just want to be in the comfort of your own gym, and that's a priority, I think as long as you take precautions, I'm not going to say don't go, but again, there are risks. It's indoors, and there are people who, have been on the same machinery.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I don't disagree. I think there are probably plenty of safe ways to utilize a gym.
Yeah. The reason there's even a debate is because there's no perfect way to do it, right? And if there was if we had a ticket that said, hey, take this and you'll be fine, then we'd, it'd be a lot easier. Any other things we want to talk about that pertain to decision making on, here we go. People are asking this all the time. Renting a beach house, staying in a hotel in the summer. What do you think about that?
Either or the relative merits between the two?
Let's talk about, I
think renting a place, again, you have more control over that place than you do if you're staying in a hotel with more people coming in and out. Staying in a hotel can be safe. I think now is a really important time to recharge your batteries.
I agree.
And if your summertime routine requires that time, I think it's worth finding a way to get to a place that you really enjoy, hopefully with family within a reasonably controlled bubble. And for a lot of my older patients, I've been surprisingly encouraging. I surprised myself how much I've encouraged my older high-risk patients to seek this out.
It's interesting. Do you think that's because you just know how important it is for people to see their loved ones, to hug and be together?
Absolutely. And I do, it's a mixture of that, and it's a mixture of combined with my concern about what this fall and winter could be, right? We got to hope for the best and plan for the worst, and knowing that this winter could potentially look a lot worse than this spring. Again, we were blessed with wonderful weather here in the mid-Atlantic for most of this shutdown. Yep. But if there's ice and snow, those walks go away. And so I really am encouraging my patients to say, if there is that place that you would like to go, or a type of activity with family that you want to engage in, do it. Yeah. And now's the time to do it. Absolutely.
And I think, the virus does not live on surfaces terribly long. It doesn't live on fabric very long. So if you're going to a beach house and you're checking in, people have asked me, do I need to, bomb the whole interior to make sure that I've killed all the coronavirus and have my kids outside for 12 hours in tents before we go into the rental house? The answer is no. Because the way the virus is spread is really respiratory droplets, and we think some aerosolization. It's not really through surfaces, although it's not zero risk. I would say when you come into the rental house, when you come into the hotel room, wipe down the high touch surfaces like the doorknobs, the light switches, the countertops, and of course you're going to be washing your hands all the time while you're there. So just do the best you can. But I don't think you need to fumigate a rental house. I think you just need to.
I don't think that is necessary. If that makes you feel more comfortable,
right,
go for it. But I don't think it's necessary.
So then people are asking me on the eve of their departure onto a vacation trip, should I get tested? If I do not have symptoms and I'm going to merge my pod with my family member, particularly if it's an older family member, should I get tested just to see? And what are you telling people about asymptomatic testing, Clay?
I'm generally discouraging it because a negative test provides no true reassurance. So what's the point? I'm seeing a lot of states like Maine and others, or other family members sort of demanding it. Okay, we'll figure out how to make this happen. I mean, LabCorp has a home testing kit. The fire stations of Washington are allowing for asymptomatic testing, where we test, I'd send most of my patients to Sibley. I can't send patients who are asymptomatic still.
Right.
But so I'm generally discouraging it, not because just it's more difficult to get tested, because a negative test, even in the best tests, still does not prove you do not have COVID-19. So if you're looking for that definitive answer, it can't be found. You can look back at your own history of how many high-risk contacts you have. Do you have any symptoms at all that might just be sort of lurking there that you've been ignoring because you're so excited about the trip? But
right.
Generally speaking, you can't get that level of reassurance, so it's not worth the effort. But there's some people who have to, and I've guided them in those directions, home-based testing or otherwise.
And then the other question I'm getting is, if you were in a high-risk scenario, like you had let your guard down and you had a couple too many beers and that socially distanced barbecue became an up-close kind of, moth to flame, should you get tested? Or if you were protesting, peacefully and responsibly, should you get tested? And the answer is, again, it depends, and you have to know the limitations of the test. But what I am telling people who want to get tested, who have no symptoms, but were in a situation where they were potentially at risk, is to at least wait 4 or 5 days to get tested, because, the minute you get off an airplane, the minute you leave a protest, the minute you leave that drunken barbecue, is not the time to get the test, because the virus is not going to show up even if you got it. So you should wait 4 or 5 days to get tested if you're going to do it at all. But even then, it's not a guarantee, as you just said, Dr. Ackerly, that a negative test isn't like a proof that you don't have it. And so, and if you were in a high risk situation, I'd say behave as if you have it until at least the test results, because it takes a couple days, and maybe for even longer.
I mean, I think so. I totally agree, and that's what I'm recommending to my patients. This has not been a question that has been asked of us. It's not something I've thought about until just this very moment, so forgive the random tangent. But this goes, again, to the importance of contact tracing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I've not heard a lot recently about the contact tracing apps and the efforts there. And I wish there was more of a discussion.
It's like the piece we hear the least about, right? It's the piece that we hear the least about, to me.
Yeah. And then in part of phase 2, Muriel Bowser sort of loosened to say, okay, we're a little bit behind on contact tracing, but we think it's reasonable to move to phase 2. Contact tracing serves a lot of purposes. One, it keeps the lid on the top of a second wave, because you're able to find those individuals, stop the spread, which is the primary goal. But if you do contact tracing really well, we continue to learn about the risk factors that drive the spread. And so I think a lot of what we know today about contact versus aerosol, droplet, et cetera, is because of really good contact tracing efforts that I don't think is getting the attention it really deserves right now.
Yeah, my sense is that DC, they're training people, every day, but it's not where it should be. At the outset of the pandemic, I think we were making reopening contingent on more testing, that contact tracing than we have now. But anyway, that is a political subject that we needn't go into. Yeah, someone here is surprised that a negative test is not 100%. Not at all. There's a 20 to 30%. I'm telling people 30%, but it's 20 to 30% false negative.
I haven't seen a single test, even if done perfectly, that's any better than a 20%.
Right.
False
Right.
negative.
Yep. So what else do we want to cover? Let's see. I'm looking at other questions that are coming in.
Yeah. Have you gotten any patients requesting blood typing?
You know what? Someone did today. She said she's a type A person, so she expects herself to be type A. Let's talk about that. There's been some interesting data to suggest that type A patients are at higher risk for the respiratory distress that can come from COVID, and type O patients are less inclined to have the respiratory complications. So what do you make of that?
I mean, I think it's interesting and a very important finding. It's something that I was very skeptical of. There's a little early hint of it. Did not make intuitive sense why one's blood type would have such an impact or a clinically significant impact. And it seems to potentially have that level of an impact. It still needs to be proven. We need to figure out why. But some of the data now shows, yeah, type A is at higher risk. Type O, as you said, at lower risk of these complications. However, I don't think it changes our decision making. So I'm happy to order a blood type, and I've offered it to my patients. But it doesn't change anything when it comes to when to get tested, which is symptom-based, and when to seek treatment as well, which is symptom-based. And maybe on the margins, if you were type A versus type O, I'd be a little bit more inclined to send you to the hospital early if you're feeling a little bit worse, but probably not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you're saying, there's no like action item. What I've been trying to convey to my patients in my newsletters and just in person to my patients or on virtual platforms is, you know, what's helpful to patients, I think, is actionable items. And the blood typing, if you know your blood type, it's not going to change your behavior. It's not going to change what you do. It doesn't mean that if you're type O, that you can now sort of like frolic through, you know, Shake
Sadly,
Shack.
type O patients are dying. Type O patients are dying, and
that's right.
Type A patients are doing great.
That's it. So it's not the whole story, right? We know that the biggest risk factors for having bad outcomes or less good outcomes are age, diabetes, hypertension. Yeah. You know what? Can we talk about that for a minute? Because people are asking me these kind of questions. I saw a patient of mine this week virtually who is diabetic, but her diabetes is very, very well controlled. It's very tightly controlled. She exercises, you know, regularly. She eats very well. Her A1C, which is the blood test we use to monitor diabetes, is quite low and excellent. And so, you know, she asked me, am I at less risk than someone who has, you know, out of control diabetes? And do I even consider myself high risk given that my diabetes is under control? And the answer is we don't have enough data to tell you for sure that you're lower risk when your diabetes is under control, or if your high blood pressure is under control, you know, that if you're lower risk than someone who has high blood pressure and maybe doesn't even know they have it. But it stands to reason, if you know that if you are tightly controlled in your diabetes and your blood pressure is well controlled with medication or lifestyle modifications, that you are probably going to do better than someone who is out of control.
I think the answer is almost certainly absolutely you're going to do better. The question is how much.
That's right.
And I think and I think your answer is probably the truly right one. We don't know, and we don't know.
We don't know, but
if you
but we can also extrapolate based on things we know. You know, we know about the flu. We know about, so it stands to reason that you're better off if you're under good control with these underlying health conditions.
And when one of the biggest priorities now going into the next 12 months, if you happen to have one of those conditions, is to get it under control.
That's it. That's it. That's probably the best thing you could do. The thing you cannot reverse is your age, and that's unfortunate. But you know, age is also relative. As you and I talked about in our last live conversation, you know, there's chronological age and there's biological age. And, you know, maybe you want to talk about that for a quick minute, Clay, because
I think it's early on. So that, you know, that was, I think, in our first talk. And I think there's an important point, and almost in everything that we look at, there is an important distinction between chronologic and biologic age. So, you know, age is just a number, and there are a lot of things you can do to combat the effects of aging.
Yep.
Age is all in any new study. It's almost always included in the analysis because it's really easy data to find, right? Everybody's sort of got their birth date out there, and so you know the patient's age pretty quickly, and so it's always a part of the analysis. And it correlates with a lot of things, including higher blood pressure, and unfortunately, in most people, a decline in immunity, although we don't have great blood tests to say your immune function looks A or B, but it does correlate with a lot of things.
Right. So it may
So,
sometimes it's not causal, but it's right.
It's correlative, and therefore, I was hoping that by now we'd see more information about what makes you high risk and low risk. Blood type is one of those new findings, and there are some others. Age seems to be fairly sticky and hasn't gone away because we haven't cracked the code of what's driving the higher risk. But like in almost everything else, age is more correlated with something else. We just have to find what that is and see if we can impact it positively. Going back to exercise, that is something that we know improves your innate immunity. It can help combat cognitive decline and other things. So exercise needs to be a mainstay, as hard as it's going to be coming into the summer, to maintain that exercise too. So that's a great point. I look forward to seeing what underlies, the age risk, because therefore we can target more interventions.
That's right. I'm talking to people just on a sort of corollary subject about sort of managing your underlying conditions, and also managing sort of your making sure you're getting your basic biological needs met. I think during a stressful time like a pandemic, it's very easy to let exercise go, to not prioritize sleep. And so I made up this little, remember my mnemonic device from last time, mosh pit, which is the way you mitigate risk. Okay, so mosh pit still stands. Mosh pit's not going anywhere, but STEM, not the, not the science, technology, engineering, and math STEM, but rather sleeping, talking, exercising, and moving. Sorry, eating and moving. Oh my God, I don't even know my own mnemonic device.
No, but I mean, eating and exercise are both E's, and they're both important. So you have so
sleeping is important. So, the ways that we reduce inflammation, and inflammation is a buzzword these days, but inflammation is real, and the way we reduce inflammation is by getting adequate sleep, S. T, reducing stress by talking, whether it's talking to your dog, talking to a therapist, talking on an app that's interactive, whether it's meditation. Basically, T is code for managing your anxiety and talking through worries and fears, whether it's journaling or whatever. E is eating, so prioritizing getting regular meals, so 3 meals a day ideally, minimizing if you can excess processed food and junk. Hello to the person who asked about the drive-through fast food. No judgment. And at all. I mean, we all love fast food.
You may not catch COVID for your fast food. It may make COVID worse if you happen to catch it another way.
That's right. But there's nothing like a good drive-through on a summer weekend when you're on a road trip. And then so E is eating, prioritizing regular meals and not forgetting to eat, not skipping meals. And then M is moving, getting regular exercise. So, prioritizing the STEM is sort of like, making sure you're taking care of your basic biological needs to reduce inflammation and optimize your underlying health conditions. All right. So what else can we talk about here? Oh, the second wave. What do you think about the second wave? What is your prediction if you had a crystal ball to look in? And what do you think about the flu and how it's going to, dance with coronavirus? And then another question is this: do you think the incidence of flu and other respiratory viruses will come down because we're being so vigilant with hand washing and distancing and masks?
So on that final question, I hope so. Right? Hope for the best, plan for the worst. I think that it will, and part of that is hopefully not just the social distancing, which we know has a positive impact on reducing influenza spread, but also, as I've talked to my patients already about, which is line up for the flu shot when it arrives, right? So I do think that's important that everybody gets vaccinated for influenza, because when you call me in the fall with a fever, it's gonna be really nice to know that you've been vaccinated for flu. It's never 100%, and we hope that we get a really good match this year. But that's gonna be able to facilitate and make your care more rapid in getting assessed for COVID, instead of having to sit there and rule out influenza. Also, I worry a great deal about a double hit. If you happen to catch both, they do work in different ways against the respiratory system, against your immune system. They're different viruses, and that could be potentially devastating. We don't know how devastating, but that is one of the concerns out there about this fall for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think people are thinking more than ever about what we see annually, which is an influenza epidemic. And I think people are now understanding, perhaps, I hope, what is herd immunity and what is the concept of getting a vaccine yourself to protect your neighbor, your grandmother, the most vulnerable people in our population. Because at the end of the day, getting the flu shot can help mitigate some symptoms, can help keep you from getting the most, deadly complications from the flu. But it also, once we vaccinate enough people, and we have, 70% is considered herd immunity.
Yeah.
Then
around there, yeah.
then you're less likely to infect, other people in the community who are, and the mortality rate then comes down. So it's just like now, getting a flu shot, which, is available annually, protects you not only from yourself, but from, it protects other people.
Absolutely.
Um,
And I think that the influenza conversation, if you don't mind, I'm going to go on another
Please.
tangent, but there's a question that was asked
Please.
about what's the deal with the oral polio vaccine.
Oh, please. I
MMR
love you.
vaccine.
This is your pet. You love this topic.
And I think I am fascinated by the science about how these vaccines, these live attenuated viral vaccines, can potentially prime our innate immune system to combat all hosts of pathogens. So the scientist who discovered HIV is passionate about this topic, and there's some data from early, polio studies with Salk and Sabin. They showed that the oral polio vaccine can reduce influenza mortality and all-cause mortality in certain populations. So I think looking at ways that we can boost the innate immune system is fascinating. Sadly, we right now have zero data to support that hypothesis. So I'm extremely excited about it. Hopefully we'll have some proof soon, because these things are off the shelf and we can deliver them pretty rapidly. If you forgive me for one, just kind of continuing on.
Please, go for it. Just
real
wax
quick.
poetic.
And I think it then goes into vaccine versus therapeutic, which is going to come to our rescue first.
What do you think?
I remain really
Your
concerned
therapeutics.
about the vaccines, and I'm, getting more behind therapeutics. The fact that remdesivir is IV, it's not getting enough credit for the likely impact it has on mortality. The steroid study that just came out on dexamethasone out of the UK, dramatic improvement in mortality, about a third, which is massive in these sorts of things. So we're just going to stack these therapeutics and get more refined and drive the mortality rate down. And I think it's much better to get it now than it was 3 months ago. We're just that much smarter about how to combat coronavirus. One thing that I will say, though, for those people who want to stock up on their dexamethasone, is that it has been shown not to work in patients who don't need oxygen. So if you're at home, you do not need this medicine. It could actually cause harm by reducing your immune system as you're trying to fight the virus before you get really sick.
That's right.
Then stop there.
It's only the sickest patients. It reduced mortality by a third in the people who are on ventilators to help them breathe, and then it reduced mortality by a fifth in patients who needed oxygen. But as you said, do not run out and get dexamethasone, even though it's like $4 to get. And again, not advertising.
I've heard about some shortages already, and it's let patients in the hospital get it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it reminds me of the early days when hydroxychloroquine was being touted, and there was a gentleman who took it from his medicine cabinet and died from it. So again, the facts and the data are coming out less rapid fire. Like we're not getting these sort of breaking news stories, even though the news would like to think we are breaking every 2 minutes. But Dr. Ackerly and I will keep our patients informed and keep you informed on things that are actionable.
Yep.
Right now, there's no action item on the dexamethasone. There's no need to go get it. If you get poison ivy, maybe you'll need a drib and a drab of a little oral steroid to cool it off if you're itching, like crazy. But in general, we don't want to promote steroids. We don't want to hoard things that are not shown to have benefit.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's interesting. Someone called me today about the MMR. So the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine is another vaccine that potentially, there's just no hard data on whether it would benefit people and by boosting the innate immune system to fight coronavirus. But there's a theoretical there's theoretical benefit there.
Theoretical benefit in hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
And it's just completely bombed out.
Yep.
Politics aside, it just does not work. I was hopeful that it could be.
You were hopeful. I was hopeful too.
But didn't prove out.
So what do you think about a vaccine? Do you think we'll get a vaccine in 2021? Do you think it's
I've actually, other than really looking at and hoping for more data on these existing vaccines, I have pushed to the side of my brain following the news cycle, because even at best, it's late 2020. And even then, I'm going to have a lot of question marks before I'm going to
About
ask my
safety.
patients to take it. Safety for sure. When you look at what's happening with these children, now children less likely to get it, less likely to spread it. For those kids who do get it and then get the Kawasaki-like syndrome, it's showing us that an immune response to coronavirus can be potentially dangerous.
Right.
It's a stimulating immune response to something, like coronavirus. They're trying to do it in different ways, can have negative consequences. And there are a lot of vaccines that have flamed out due to safety. So particularly as therapeutics get better, it's going to look extremely foolish if we expose a lot of people to a potentially harmful vaccine. And I am a deep believer in vaccines.
Yes.
And my big fear about the anti-vax movement, discouraging people when there is a vaccine that we need to get deployed in scale, we hopefully can do that quickly. But
but certainly if you're doing a vaccine and trying to distribute it en masse at warp speed, as they're calling it, you do run the risk of sacrificing safety. And so we do need to be very careful. And you're right, you don't want to give any, fuel to the fire for anti-vaxxers, because vaccines are, life-saving when they're safe.
We need to be honest about what's going on and some of the concerns so we can mitigate them and be, open to finding them.
Yep. Okay, so any other questions that are coming in? I'm just looking.
As you're looking, I got the question about the 3 feet versus the 6 feet and some of the.
Let's talk about 3 feet. There's some data to show that, this is interesting. It was done in healthcare settings where 3 feet is thought to be okay as opposed to 6 feet. What do you make of that?
3 feet is better than 0 feet. I would say I don't believe that data necessarily, and I have not picked that study apart. There are other people who say 10 feet is better than 6. We know that distance matters, and I imagine there are going to be situations when 3 feet is fine. And I don't think, have we talked about hugging yet?
Let's talk about hugging, because there's a way to hug that's safer than not.
0 feet is okay, and I want to push, particularly for low-risk individuals, but even high-risk individuals who really want to hug from a loved one, do like the hold your breath hug, right? Wash your hands first, hold your breath, go up in there, big hug, step back, start breathing again. There are ways. And
then faces, your
faces
mouth.
Other way,
Yes.
Cheek to cheek, yes.
Yes.
So I think that for targeted contact, when it's meaningful, do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's good for your mental health.
More distance is better, and 6 feet is better than 3, and 10 feet is better than 6.
I think that's right. Can we talk about schools? So I'm getting a lot of questions from parents, patients, and I myself am a parent, as are you, about what is it going to look like in the fall for our kiddos. Do you send your kid to school? I'm about to send one off to college, and I'm the first to say that I really, really want my kids back in school. It's important for their social, emotional health. It's important for their learning, and it's important for the economy to have kids in school so parents can work.
Yeah.
I think I'm actually consulting with a number of schools in DC on how to open safely, and the stake in the ground right now is that schools are going to open, but it's not going to look as it did, pre-pandemic. They're going to have strict distancing rules, mask wearing, hygiene precautions, ventilation
flexible
systems.
Vigilance.
Yeah, the flexible vigilance, and most schools are not going to be able to have all the kids, back on campus all together all the time. So I do not envy school administrators right now, because it's an incredibly challenging job. But I do think there's a way to do it. And, I haven't studied, maybe you have, Clay, the data in Europe on schools reopening, like in Denmark, and how it's gone. But my sense is that they have not seen the spike that they might have expected. Like you might have expected if you put adults together, like vulnerable
Absolutely.
people together.
And I think the evidence is building to support that. There's one study that certainly has informed my thinking on the subject.
Oh, tell me about it.
It was out of Berkeley, and they looked at the various policies across the globe and looked at which policies, at least as announced by governments. It's really hard to measure what's happening on the ground, but the policies announced by governments and their impact on COVID spread. And they didn't find any impact on school closures, one way or the other. All right, so closing schools didn't slow down the pandemic. They have caveats with their analysis. There's a lot more that needs to be looked at. But when you combine that information with how hard it is for kids to get coronavirus, how hard it is for them to get sick from it if they get, coronavirus, how it's likely harder for them to spread it if they have it. Although obviously if a kid is actively sick with coronavirus, you want to take full precautions. So I think all of that is reassuring. And you go to we have to separate out what we really need or really hope to be able to have and from what is safe. But everything is pointing to school in one form or the other is really important and possible. And we should plan for that.
I think that's right. And I think, as I was saying to some of the school administrators I was talking to this past week, we're trying to protect the kids with the measures we're taking as we think about reopening schools, but we're also trying to protect the people that are in the kids' orbits, right? Because, it's not just about the kids and protecting them from getting sick. It's about protecting them from, asymptomatic spread and then bringing it home to their parents, bringing it home to their grandparents. But again, it sounds like the data is mounting that, we can do this and we just have to be cautious.
Yeah.
The flexible vigilance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Any last parting words before we go? Because it's almost 9:00.
Oh, great. You put me on the spot here. I think the way that you opened it up was
let's
really
close with that.
done. I think so. I'll let you do it. But in terms of the anxiety, we are now overwhelmed with a lot of tough decisions. Take the information that we're giving you. We can't answer every question for you. Try to use your common sense. And I say that with full respect for the challenges that you're facing in trying to make these decisions, and decide based on really what matters to you.
That's it.
If things are just convenient or you feel like that's a nice idea, but it really doesn't matter, just put it to the side. Wait.
I think it's a great point. Yeah, it's a good time to drill down into what, makes you happy. And for most people, I would say it's seeing family and taking a break from work, getting your hair done, getting your nails done. I mean, that, I love doing that, but I'm personally going to put that aside for now because I can live without it. And it's not worth the risk. And I feel an obligation to stay as healthy as I can for myself, but also for my patients. But no judgment for people who have a nice, full set manicure, pedicure. When I see them next time, no judgment at all, because I mean, who am I to judge? If Clay got a backyard haircut, Dr. Ackerly did, it looks great. But these are very personal decisions. And as we have talked about from the get-go, and I've been talking about like crazy, our mental health matters. And so inserting joy, pleasure, happiness during a pandemic is important. It's good for your health. So I think you should try to think about getting away, take those vacations, just do it safely. And hopefully some of the things we've talked about tonight will mitigate the risk and make you feel less anxious about, taking little small risks that mean a lot to you. So Clay, I think we should do this again, maybe in a couple more weeks. When we've got some more information and some more data, and accumulate some more questions. And until then, thank you for joining me.
All right. Thank you. It was great.
Okay, it's fun. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye, everybody.